All right. Hello, everybody. Andrew here at Top Fitness Strategies, here with another great interview this evening. And as always, we do have sponsors. And if you've been following me quite a bit, you understand how my sponsorship works. My sponsorship is basically stuff that I offer and promote and things like that sort. So this evening, something happened with my screen here. Sorry about that. And as you also follow me, you know how absent-minded I can be. So tonight's sponsor is 102 at-home common sense health and fitness tips. Yes, this is the ebook I always been telling you guys about the last couple of weeks, and it is our sponsor again this evening. So I'll get that link up to you in just a second. But on with the main show, we got limited time here, so I want to make sure we get as much as possible here. So I have the privilege of interviewing Dr. Kristie Ennis, and I'll bring her on right now. There she is. Whoop.
Oh,
there she is. There she is. All right. Dr. Kristie's love for how the human body works and moves pushed her to pursue a doctorate degree in physical therapy. She is also now certified in dry needling, a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and has been certified to conduct selective functional movement assessments. Additionally, she has taken special training in handling women's health issues and oncology. And now she can also say she has been a guest on Top Fitness Strategies interview series. Welcome, Dr. Kristie. Okay, and one thing I like to do, Dr. Kristie, before she told me to call her Kristie, but I gotta make sure I'm formal because I don't get to talk to doctors much because they don't talk to me. And for everybody watching and listening out there, I always go through how I ran into or met or connected the people that I interview. I like to search YouTube for different fields in the fitness world. I focus on the fitness over 50 crowd, and somehow, some way, some shape, and I'm glad it happened. Dr. Kristie's page showed up on my feed one day, so I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So one of the things that really struck me about her page was her motto. It says, her tagline says, "My philosophy is to get you back to living your authentic life and as quickly as possible without medication or surgery," which is what I'm all about as well. I don't like medication. So then I started going through some of her titles to her videos, like "Fix It in 5," biceps and tendons, neck relief, stiff neck and shoulder stretches. And I started saying, okay, this is a person I really got to talk to. So I reached out to her. Graciously, she said, sure, no problem. She'll give me a little bit of her time. And so I know I'm rambling. Dr. Kristie, welcome. Did I cover everything there?
I think so. I think you did a pretty good job there.
Okay, so tell the people more about yourself, because I just briefly got in there a little bit. So how did you get to be Dr. Kristie?
So I actually, as most physical therapists end up having a lot of their own injuries. I shattered my ankle as a kid, and I was told I would never run again and probably wouldn't walk again either. And I went through some pretty intensive physical therapy, and I actually ended up completing 2 Ironman races. And so without my physical therapist, I never would have done that. So that was the impetus when I was a kid to say, okay, this is really what I want to do with my life. And I can't stop moving. So I needed a job where I could do that.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Well, great. Now, I notice a lot of your videos are on stretching and flexibility and also mobility. So that's why I wanted to talk to you more about.
Yeah.
But before we do that, one thing I got to ask you about, you say you have you're certified in dry needling. Now,
Yep.
You got to tell me what that is all about.
I feel like I should pull out a needle here. I'm gonna. So it's really not, there's my big hand up on the screen. They're all individually wrapped. Don't worry, I'm sterile, I promise. Dry needling is similar to acupuncture in that they're actually acupuncture needles. But what the needle is doing is going into all of those really tight spots and breaking them up. That's probably the simplest way to put it. So
Okay. Wait, when you say tight spots, what do you mean by tight spots?
So if you ever, let's say you have a sore shoulder and you kind of rub along your arm or your shoulder and you go, oh, there's a little bump, right? That's a knot in the muscle. And so we're trying to get those to basically release, and all the cells communicate with each other. So that's what cells are doing. So it's almost like a form of very deep tissue work would be another way to look at it.
So you're not injecting anything. You're just putting a needle in there? And
that's why it's dry needling, actually. Wet needling is technically when you inject, a Medicaid, like a cortisone injection. Lots of people have heard of that. That's a wet. Yeah, there you go.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So now we got that out of the way. Now let's get to the heart and soul of what I want to talk about tonight, which is stretching, mobility, and injury prevention. Okay. So I wrote down some basic questions here because I'm sure you've get asked these all the time. So you're going to get asked them one more time tonight. Okay. When people hear the word stretching, at least from what I've always been told, they say, okay, I can't stretch. In other words, and their thinking is, okay, can I bend over and touch my toes? But there's a lot more to stretching than that, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So what is stretching, and what can you tell us about stretching? Let me ask that.
So actually, a lot. And
well, okay, loaded question. I'm sorry. Basics.
There's actually some really important things to know. Number one is it is not about no pain, no gain. That used to kind of be the philosophy of like, all right, let's do that quad stretch. We'll pull and we're going to really pull and oh yeah, feel the burn. Not a good thing. That is how people actually tear muscles, or that's one of the way people tear muscles. That's kind of old school thinking. What we also really know now is that there's a difference between static stretching and dynamic stretching. So static stretching is like that stretch I just showed you right there where you're holding a stretch, right? You're just kind of holding a position. Dynamic stretching is moving and it's only holding really for a couple seconds at a time, kind of like a walking lunge would be that stretches the hip flexors out. Those types of stretches, the dynamic stretches, are really, 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 really important to do before you are warmed up. They help get blood flow going. That's really the main thing. They help blood flow get going and get those layers gliding. So before an athletic event or before, you go out and go for a walk, or if you've been sitting at your desk, which we all unfortunately are having to do a lot nowadays, you don't want to just sit there and do this. This is actually a bad stretch anyways, but you don't want to just be like, okay, it's been 20 minutes. I'm going to stretch a little bit. No, that's the time you really want to have some mobility with it, right? That moving stretch. After you've done a workout or after you've, been in the hot tub,
there you go. All right.
Right? Wouldn't that be great? But that's the time you want to do something like that quad stretch or a hamstring stretch where you're holding for a specific length of time. And that's a very, very big, important distinction.
All right. Now, you mentioned to do that dynamic stretching is you do that before you warm up. Is that what you said, or did you say after you warm up?
Before you exercise, really.
Before you exercise.
The form of warm up, and actually, it can be a better form of warm up than just hopping on an exercise bike or walking, because you can actually go through multiple joints in the body to get them loosened up, versus like a bike just works on a couple things.
Okay. All right. Which is going to lead me into the next question here. It says, so what can be stretched? I mean, we're talking about muscles, but there's more to it. There's more to the human body than just muscles. What can be stretched?
And so really, you don't want to stretch a ligament. You don't want to stretch anything else but a muscle, to be honest with you. You
really?
Want you want more in the terms of movement, or if we're talking about a joint, that again is mobility and gliding. Those things don't stretch. And if you overstretch them, that's actually a sprain, is an overstretched ligament. All right. So if you sprain an ankle, you overstretch your ligament. The misnomer with stretching is that we're not even really sure that you're actually like stretching or lengthening a muscle. It actually takes hours to make any true length differences. So again, the theory is probably we're just getting things to glide and move over one another a little better.
Wow, that's interesting. So I never heard of that. That's great. That's great. So then, my next question is going to be big, I guess, here. So my next question was, why is stretching good for you? But you just said that really, unless you do it for a couple hours, you're really not doing much.
No, so I'm going to go back to that, right? That's what I was saying. It's not that it's not good, okay? You really think in order to actually lengthen the muscle, it would take a couple hours. But so after you have the blood flow going, you've got things moving. Now things are going to be able to be lubricated. Motion is lotion. Things are moving a little bit. What we really think is happening is that those receptors that are in the muscles are talking to the brain and saying, hey, help us relax, let go a little bit.
Okay.
So it's more about almost a neurological technique or communication with the brain than it is about making true stretch gains.
Well, that's interesting.
I know,
So,
right?
okay, so this has hit my head.
Yeah.
And I bring this up because this is something and people that follow me know that I do a weekly video and weekly writings and things of that sort. So the question about stretching came up, and somebody says, "Well, yoga is all about stretching. I don't like to do yoga, so I can't stretch, so I don't do yoga." But those are two totally different things, are they not?
Yes, and there is stretching involved in yoga. I like to look at yoga, and I love yoga. I like
Mm-hmm.
to look at yoga as more mobility, right? When you're doing yoga, you're moving through poses and fluid. And usually when you start a yoga program, they're not just having you immediately start with a static hold of something. You're kind of warming up that way too.
Right. Okay. Okay. And so you mentioned mobility, which is going into our next set here is all about mobility. So how do you describe mobility to somebody that just comes to you for the first time and says, I want to be more mobile? Because right away I'm thinking, okay, to be more mobile, you got to get up and walk around. That's one thing to be more mobile. But mobility is something completely different, if I understand correctly.
So when I talk about mobility, and I usually talk about mobility more so than I do about stretching, because mobility really includes all your structures, your ligaments, your tendons, your joints, and how they're moving, right? So like I said, we don't want to stretch a ligament, but things do have to move and glide in the right way in order for your whole body to move. So for example, if my mid part of my back, I know you can't see that well, you still can't see that well, and I'm pointing at that. My mid part of my back is really tight, and that includes the muscles and the spine itself, then I actually can't raise my arm up all the way. So you have to think about trying to do some work to both the joint and the muscle, even in the spot that's not hurting, in order for you to actually move the proper way through the body. So it's rarely just about one body part.
Okay. That just kind of goes into my next question. You're like reading my notes here. So why would somebody want to be more mobile?
That is a wonderful question because it makes you feel better. You really can't.
I hope no one's listening to this. A doctor is that I have a question here. It's great.
Piece of your of anything. So without being able to be properly mobile, you can't strengthen properly, you can't move properly, and you sometimes don't even have great posture until things actually move and glide the way they need to. So mobility and posture, honestly, both of those together are the most important parts of any program and any body if you want to actually feel good.
Okay. So mobility is not stretching, but stretching is mobility. Am I understanding that correctly? How does it work?
Stretching or lengthening or whatever word you want to use can be part of mobility, right? But like I said, mobility incorporates really the whole, all of those structures. When we're talking about stretching, you're typically talking about just the muscle. I think that's maybe a better distinction.
Okay. All right. And here's going to be a real softball question for you.
Oh, goody.
Not that they haven't been until now. How can somebody get better mobility or be better mobile? I don't even know how to phrase that right. How can somebody, basically, if somebody's sitting at home and says, I need to start getting more mobile or get more mobility in my, what can they start doing? I mean, obviously contacting you, which we'll get into in a little bit, but if they're just sitting on the couch, what can they do?
I like really, really basic, easy things. That's important. I think a lot of that nowadays, we see all these complicated exercise motions and movements, and it doesn't have to be that way. Some really, really simple things to start are even little shoulder blade squeezes. That helps open up the chest, and it helps improve your posture so that you can't do those if you're in this position. Little chin tucks, even little arm opens and closes.
Okay.
Arm circles, right? Again, obviously listening to your body to make sure that all of this stuff feels okay.
Right.
Like little kind of reverse lunges, and I know my phone is probably not showing my whole body, but I can only angle it so much. But a little, stepping back into a lunge with those arms up gets that whole fascial line.
Okay.
And if you're sitting and you can't get up, and a lot of people really, that's the case if they're doing meetings. Even I'm going to move my phone for a minute. I hope I don't make it. But even taking and just doing some little leg kicks, some little leg marches, right?
Okay.
Any movement you can get is better than just sitting in one position. That gets blood flow going. That gets, like I was saying, those layers to help kind of glide a little bit. So don't make, it doesn't have to be fancy and twisting and, standing on one leg and leaping. The more motion you can get, the better off you are.
And it goes to exactly to what I always say. Doing something is always better than doing nothing. Like you said, even if you're just kicking your legs up from your desk, that's huge for somebody that doesn't do that on a regular basis. I would assume. Okay.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay. On to part 3. Okay. All right. Injury prevention. Whoa. Which, when you get older like myself, because and my crowd is the fit over 50 crowd, you're a lot younger than us, and so you don't have all the aches and pains that we do, but I'm sure you run into folks like us all the time. So my question is okay, so I don't even know how I want to phrase this, because I put down, here's what I wrote down. I don't even know why I put it. It says, is this the same as just not doing as much? If that makes any sense. I don't know what I was thinking of. I guess just back off on, for instance, when you're working out, preventing an injury it's not the same as not doing as much workout. Correct? There's two different things. Am I making sense?
It's not about working out less. It's about doing more to help recover those structures that get a little tighter. So when we hit the age of 30, ligaments and tendons actually start to lose their elasticity. So it doesn't get better with each decade either. It just kind of goes the other way, right? That's great if it did.
It'd be great, man. I'm telling you.
So that's where it takes a little bit longer to do a proper warm-up before you get into your workout. It may take a little bit of, a little less weight, maybe. I'm not saying that has to be the case. Mm-hmm. But really and truly, it's usually more about what do you do before and what do you do after. Whereas when you were 20, you could just go hop in and, rip out some bicep curls and be good to go on your way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You can't do that when you're 50. And I'm in my 40s. You can't do that in your 40s either, let me tell you.
You're not in your 40s. Don't give me that.
I also had Lyme disease, so I've had a lot of pain in my body. So
my word.
Yeah, so I know what it means. I know what it means to have to warm up. But yeah, that's the thing, is doing the proper mobility work, right, beforehand. Okay. And then afterwards, also getting some of that stretching, I love massage and self-massage. If you had to do one thing, period, it would be that. And I find that makes even a bigger difference than sometimes stretching mobility does. There's ongoing research on that, as showing why, and there's lots of different reasons why that is. We won't get into the scientific talk on that, but I find that can be hugely beneficial for people.
Okay, so what can be huge? You said massage and self-massage. Is that what?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Now, I always say I'd like to keep my interviews, G or PG rated, but what is self-massage?
This is still G, I promise. I'm supposed to make it not G if you really want to go that way, but we're not going to do that. So self-massage would be using something like, your hand. You certainly could use your hand. That doesn't work that well. A rolling pin, the Derma Edge like I have, foam roller, those types of things. A Theragun, you've probably seen that, the little battery-operated thing, right, that kind of does that. That was my term. That actually makes more of a difference for the body. And I find that because we sit so much, especially as we're getting older, if you sit a lot and then just go jump into your workout, boy, are you in trouble. So if I have people do kind of self-massage techniques, tennis ball is a great way to start, honestly, like behind the low back in your chair, under your foot when you're sitting down, just kind of rolling your foot on the tennis ball. But I have people do that almost every hour in a day, because how can you even if you were to do all this mobility work for 10 minutes before your workout, you just sat for 8 hours. You're not going to counteract everything you did in 10 minutes. So
say that again with the tennis ball. So when you're just sitting there, you put it under your foot and roll your foot back and forth?
Yeah. So that's a self-massage for your foot. And now I don't have a tennis ball with me right now, but I could be doing it right now and you would never know. So you can be on a Zoom meeting or whatever, and do that and not have anyone know. The same thing for a tennis ball. If you have you have to have a backrest to your chair. But if you put a tennis there, and then, this is what you'll see, right? You can just tell people that you're dancing to the music in your head. I don't
Oh,
know.
there you go.
But those
So,
are great ways to help relieve tension through the muscles.
okay, I'm fascinated by this tennis ball thing. So, do you, I'm assuming you have to take your shoes off to do it properly.
Yes.
Okay.
I should have mentioned that. Yes, you do have to take your shoe off. You can leave your sock on, though.
You can what?
You can leave your sock on.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay. Now, and I don't know if we're going to be able to do this or not, because I want to know how, if you can give some examples of how somebody can prevent injuries, or I should maybe not prevent, maybe after injury, because once you get up to my age, which is a lot older than 40, all right,
I'm
you have,
almost 42.
okay, I'm still a lot older than 42. uh, I hear it all the time, and I'm sure you hear it more than I do. Back, knees, and shoulders. Those are the three main things that I hear about people. I love hearing people say, "Well, I can't squat. I got bad knees." Well, if you start doing some sort of squat, you're going to strengthen those knees. Believe it or not, you know.
Well, let's start with that, because
Okay.
that's a tricky one. People squat improperly all the time, which often causes knee pain.
Okay.
So one of the we'll start with just knees and that kind of stuff. So one of
Okay.
the things that really makes a difference for squatting is sitting your butt back so that your weight is on your heels as opposed to your weight shifted forward. And when
Mm-hmm.
people struggle, I'll have them put a band around their knees and press out against the band so that they're really using their butt muscles. That activates your glute, your butt muscles a little bit more, and puts less stress on.
Okay. All right. Now, also, and I put a link early, in there, in the chat. What you're describing, with the squats and the bands, I'm assuming you have a video that shows this. You have the gazillion videos up there.
I
Which
know.
are,
I can tell you which
yeah,
video.
but it's in there. But it's in there.
Yeah, I've got
Okay.
something.
Okay. All right. So, what about the shoulder or the back? What can people do for that?
Oh man, so and that's a tough one because there's it's really hard to narrow that down without knowing what the actual issue.
Okay. All right. All right. Fair enough. We won't get into a lot of it then. That's once we start. In my opinion, is once we start talking about people's back, like you said, there's so many different variations. You don't want to say one that somebody does and then screws up their back. So I completely get it, and that was a bad question on my part. So sorry about that. You also mentioned a bit ago this product called the Derma Edge. Now, I bring this up because this is something that's on your website, and you market this. So I want to know more about it. So tell us what it is exactly, and then I want to ask you some questions about it as well.
Sure. Yeah, let me see. I know I have one. Just let me pull it out of my drawer. Woohoo. So this is it. I actually created this when I had Lyme disease, when I was first diagnosed with Lyme disease, because I used to get massages regularly, and I was not able to do that. One thing, I couldn't leave the house because I was in too much pain, but I also couldn't tolerate any deep tissue. And I was really tired of not finding something that made me feel better. Now, I used to tell my patients to use a door hinge at home, and that is why this is almost patterned like a large door hinge.
Okay.
But this is a way, and the handle is this way because my hands were really sore, and you don't have to grip really hard in order to actually make this work. So that's
Okay.
one of
Well,
the.
what do you do with it? Can you demonstrate real quick?
Maybe I can show you. Can I show you on here? Yeah, I'll just show you on my arm. So basically, it's for any area that's tight or sore, which is why this curve is here, because it fits over, right? Arms, legs, whatever.
Okay.
So if you have a shoulder injury, if you have a neck injury, if you have a knee injury, blah, blah, blah. The whole purpose is to be able to do what we call fascial release, which is a little bit of a misnomer because you're not really releasing the fascia. You're getting the fluid layers, or excuse me, the fluid to flow better between the layers that are stuck together so that things will glide, then you can move better. What we found too is that it doesn't have to be this ridiculously painful deep pressure. So when I have people use this, I only have them put moderate amount of force on it. And then again, that talks to the brain to tell things to relax a little bit. So that's in a nutshell.
And so you invented this, correct?
I did. Yeah, I have a patent on it as well.
All right, great. I know it's available at your website, which is drKristieEnnis.com, which I put up there as well. Is there any place else they can get? Well, don't say that because I want them to go to your website to get it. Never mind, forget it.
Place it's available right now, anyways. So
Okay, so no retail stores yet?
not yet. That's in the works.
Okay, good for you. So we're going to see you on Shark Tank soon, I bet you. Good.
Maybe. I like the idea.
I love that. I love Shark Tank. So, all right, Kristie, I only asked for a short period of time for you, and we're about out of time here. So, is there any parting words or something that I didn't ask that you'd like to say to the folks out there watching?
I just always want people to know, do not give up. If you haven't found the right thing to make you feel better, keep looking. There's somebody or something that can make it work. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it.
Fantastic. All right, and once again, they can reach you. What's your website again?
It's drkristieennis.com is my
Okay.
website.
Okay, and go ahead.
Sorry.
I say, go ahead, Dr. Kristie Ennis. I keep on saying Enos, but it's Ennis.com.
Yeah, tennis without a T.
Oh, okay. Tennis without a T. And also, if you're listening to this and not watching, not writing it down, you guys all know you can always contact me and I can get the message to Dr. Kristie. No problem there. So don't worry about having to scribble something down while you're driving if you're listening to this on the road or something like that. So I also put the link to your YouTube page up there, which is, again, do you know your...
Just Kristie Ennis.
It's KristieEnnis.com, and it's great. So, Dr. Kristie, thank you again for being my guest this evening on Top Fitness Strategies. And I always like to reserve the right to ask you to come back in the future if we can. If not, I completely understand because you like to talk to more sophisticated folks than me.
No, this was great.
All right. So I'll end it here. But, folks, thanks for tuning in for me and Dr. Chris this evening. And we talked about stretching, mobility, and injuries. And you can find the replays on this on my YouTube page. And if Kristie wants to put it on her page, she can as well. But we have different places you can find it, and always contact us. But thanks a lot for being here. And once again, thank you, Dr. Kristie.
Thanks.
And I'll stop it here. Goodbye.